Right now on Morning News Now, a time of sorrow in Minneapolis and across America after that horrific mass shooting at a Catholic school. Heartbreaking new video shows students running for safety after a shooter opened fire during morning mass. Now we're learning more about the two children who never made it out.
A coward decided to take our 8-year-old son Fletcher away from us. Please remember Fletcher for the person he was and not the act that ended his life.
We'll take you to Minneapolis for the latest on the investigation, including what we're learning about journal entries allegedly written by the shooter. Plus, federal face-off, the White House naming a new acting director for the CDC just one day after the controversial firing of Susan Menares. And Fed Governor Lisa Cook now suing President Trump over what she calls his unprecedented and illegal attempt to fire her from the Financial Policy Making Board. We'll have the latest from Washington. Developing this morning, the nightmare before Labor Day, communications issues being blamed for a ground stop delaying hundreds of flights at New Jersey's busy Newark airport. Plus, a series of storms could put a damper on your holiday weekend. We are tracking it all. And what makes a life well lived? Researchers say they're learning the answer from the dead, what they say they found by studying tens of millions of obituaries. Good morning. Good to have you with us on a Friday. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment. We begin this hour with the latest in that deadly shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic church. Surveillance footage and stories from witnesses are giving police a clearer picture of how the shooting unfolded during morning mass on Wednesday. That includes new video from a frightened parent who ran to the church after hearing gunshots. The footage shows children rushing out of the church to escape. Police say they've recovered 116 rifle shell casings at the scene. The 2-minute-long attack left 2 children dead and 18 other victims injured, rattling the southern Minneapolis community. The city honored the victims with prayer services across the Twin Cities yesterday, and some family members are now speaking out, including the father of 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel, who was killed in the shooting.
We will never be allowed to hold him, talk to him, play with him, and watch him grow into the wonderful young man he was on the path to becoming. Give your kids an extra hug and kiss today. We love you, Fletcher. You'll always be with us.
NBC News correspondent Jay Gray joins us now from Minneapolis with the latest. Jay, good morning. Those comments there from Jesse Merkel, absolutely heartbreaking. What more are we learning about these 2 young victims and also the many who were injured?
Yeah, and Joe, important to keep them at the front of all of this. You're right, just agonizing words from a father who is struggling with the loss of an 8-year-old son and sharing it with a community that is grieving for that loss as well. We heard about Fletcher. He loved sports, was very active, loved being at school, and was a leader in this school. But we've also heard in a written statement from the family of 10-year-old Harper Moisky, who is described as just a loving big sister, someone who was the light of her family and someone who is deeply missed as well. And it's important to put the faces and memories of these victims in the forefront of what is just a very difficult time here for those families and for this community. We do know of those that were injured. There was an additional student that was added to the list of those that were wounded during the attack yesterday. All of those students, as well as 3 parishioners, all in their 80s, expected to fully recover physically from their injuries. One of the students does remain in the hospital in critical condition, but again, that's after surgery and expected to make a full recovery. So that's good news and something that's helping to bolster this community that, again, is just struggling with what's happened here, Joe.
And we do want to keep the victims front and center, as you mentioned. They are our focus. You also mentioned yesterday that the students' training helped many of them survive this attack. So as more witnesses and survivors do begin to tell their stories, what are we learning about how they got through this terrifying experience? How many of them did survive?
Just amazing to hear how the training was taken into action when it was most needed. One of the students saying that we did train for this, that we trained for active shooting scenarios, but in the classroom, not in the church. Still, they relied on that training, diving under the pews. The older students laying on top and protecting the younger students in that church. It's a pre-K school through 8th grade, and so you hear time and time again about all of these older 7th and 8th grade students really taking charge and taking the initiative to protect the younger ones. And then, as we talked about earlier, as they fled the sanctuary, which is just behind us here, they helped to lead those younger children out. They helped to comfort those younger children, distract them in a way. And then we've heard repeatedly from the parishioners, the teachers, the staff that was inside the Mass as well, stories of leaning on their faith, praying, singing hymns during the time while they were waiting to be ushered out of the crime scene. Just an amazing story of how this young and very frightened group of students pulled together, joined together to get through just a horrific attack.
Yeah, and instantly on Wednesday, we heard the story of 10-year-old Weston, who talked about another student covering him. That student was then shot, but protecting Weston. We did say earlier police are reviewing this church surveillance footage, the cell phone video from witnesses to try and piece together what happened. What new details have emerged in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, we are learning a lot more. And first, one of the most striking things to me is the fact that police say this was an attack that had been planned not for weeks or even months, but for years, that the suspect as a teenager started to plan some sort of attack at the school she had attended, inside the church where she had worshiped. And we know that in the weeks just before the attack, came back and was inside that church and was really mapping out and then physically drawing from memory details about that church in preparation for the shooting. Fortunately, during the school mass, the doors were locked. And so the suspect could not get inside as originally planned. And that's when the plan changed and hundreds of shots were fired into the congregation through a stained glass window. We know also that in the writings, the manuscripts and journals, the postings, something investigators are studying very closely, that there was a lot of hate speech, Joe, hate of races, of religions, of processes, of the president. And there was also, investigators say, a real desire for notoriety, that this shooter had really studied and in their words, idolized some of the mass shooters and school shooters from the past in U.S. history. So they're beginning to detail some of the steps that got us here. Still aren't ready to say they have a clear motive in the attack.
All right, Jay Gray, appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much. Let's talk more about what police say they found in those extensive journal writings from the 23-year-old, which stated that the shooter wanted to see children suffer. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster has that part of the story.
Law enforcement searching for a motive to a heinous mass shooting and finding evidence of hate toward nearly all people, from a 23-year-old killer and a twisted desire for self-notoriety.
More than anything, the shooter wanted to kill children, defenseless children. In short, the shooter wanted to watch children suffer.
Police pouring through excerpts from the Minneapolis shooter's journal, some posted online, written largely using Russian Cyrillic alphabet as a way to code the entries.
How critical are those writings to your investigation?
Well, as of this time, we don't have a motive, so they are absolutely critical, trying to identify why this happened at this church.
The journals, reviewed and deciphered by NBC News, show an obsession with mass shootings, glorifying school shootings in particular. The shooter writing of being suicidal since childhood and repeatedly used anti-Semitic and racist rhetoric. Back in July, journal entries show the shooter identified Annunciation Catholic School as a target and mentioned doing reconnaissance trips past the school where authorities confirmed the shooter had once attended. Entries in the shooter's journal made multiple references to having a supportive family. NBC News' review of the writings showing her saying, "I am begging for help. I am screaming for help."
Are the shooter's parents and associates cooperating in your investigation?
Everyone that I am aware of has cooperated with the interviews that have been requested.
A former Annunciation employee telling NBC News the shooter was often sent to the principal's office for disciplinary discussions, adding that the shooter's mother, who had worked at Annunciation, talked about her child coming out as transgender and identifying as a girl. But law enforcement unable to declare a motive for a killer whose writings reveal a person filled with hatred.
And when investigators were asked about possible red flags ahead of the shooting, they said that they have no record of any encounter with police that would have prevented the shooter from purchasing a firearm. Back to you.
All right, Shaq, thank you. This morning, we're learning more about the ongoing upheaval at the nation's top public health agency. The White House announced it will tap Jim O'Neill to be the acting director of the CDC. He's currently a deputy to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This comes after the Trump administration announced earlier this week it was firing Director Susan Menarez. She refused to resign after just weeks on the job. That firing prompted other top CDC officials to resign in a show of solidarity. NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now with more on this. Monica, good morning. So the firing of Menarez seems to be creating a crisis within the CDC. Employees rallied outside its Atlanta headquarters yesterday, supporting her colleagues who resigned in protest. We're also learning new details about what led Menarez to being pushed out. What can you tell us about that and just the background of this new acting chief, Jim O'Neill?
Yeah, Joe, this is really sending shockwaves throughout the CDC, throughout the agency, and really to many public health experts. And at the core of all of this, at the heart of all of this, seems to be a disagreement about vaccine policy. And Menarez apparently was told that she was going to have to rubber stamp some potential new recommendations that would have limited who can receive COVID vaccines. And she reportedly stood up and said she didn't want to do that, and was told she also needed to dismiss some officials that she also didn't want to dismiss. So when she said all of that, she was asked to resign. She said she didn't want to, and we've seen this back and forth from the White House, and she has even raised questions about her status and doesn't believe that she was rightfully terminated. But the White House, for their part, has said that she has been fired because she doesn't align with what the president's own view of public health should be. Here's what the press secretary said on this yesterday.
Her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't. So the president fired her, which he has every right to do. I think if you're doing your job well, and if you are executing on the vision and the promises that the president made to the public who elected him back to this office, then you should have no fear about your job.
As for the new person who has been tapped to take over, this is somebody who has been a really key aide and ally to the current secretary of HHS, RFK Jr., somebody who has been carrying out his agenda as the deputy secretary, and he was confirmed by the Senate. So this is somebody who can act in this position for now, Joe.
Lots of HR-related drama coming out of the White House this week. You could say another controversy centers on the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. She's now formally sued President Trump over what she calls his unprecedented and illegal efforts to remove her from the central bank. The president's trying to remove her over allegations of mortgage fraud. Cook has not been charged with any crime. She has said she's going to look into her financial history. What's the latest in this one?
Yeah, and we may get an answer on the status of this today, Joe, because this is going to be before a judge. There will be a hearing, and that judge could determine whether she is allowed to stay in this position on which she had years left on her term. But yes, the White House and the president have said that they are firing her, quote, for cause. They've made those allegations of mortgage fraud. And for her part, Lisa Cook and her attorneys say that this may have been a potential clerical error, so some kind of an issue with the documents that they are going to try to say it does not amount to these charges, and they do continue to talk about the fact that there hasn't been any kind of an actual investigation or indictment of any crime here, and she denies that wrongdoing.
All right, Monica Alba, thank you so much. The rush is on across the country. Many of you are heading out to your Labor Day destination, marking the unofficial end of summer. The TSA says nearly 17.4 million passengers are expected to hit the skies over the holiday and into next week. It'll likely be the busiest busiest Labor Day period on record, and today will be the peak. The busy weekend got off to a bumpy start for passengers at Newark International Airport yesterday. A ground stop caused by a communications issue led to hundreds of flight delays, which cost passengers hours. Our NBC News correspondent Priya Sridhar joins us now from Atlanta, another very busy airport, with more on the weekend ahead. Priya, good morning. Let's start with those delays in Newark. What caused it? What kind of domino effect did it have on flights?
Hey, that's right, Joe. Well, Newark is always a very high volume airport, and you can expect that, of course, during this holiday travel weekend, it's going to be even busier. So, of course, this little turbulent spot just kicking off the holiday travel weekend really impacted lots and lots of passengers. What we do know from the FAA was this was due to what they're calling an equipment issue, and it caused some communication problems between pilots and air traffic controllers. That's what led to the ground stop. But even when the ground stop was lifted, it had a ripple effect on hundreds of flights, causing passengers an average of a 2.5-hour delay there. So we heard from a number of passengers who were just waiting at the airport, missing their connecting flights. And of course, some of them decided to just book rental cars and try to go to their final destinations. Other people having to pivot and change their plans for their entire weekend, Joe.
And as we mentioned, Priya, crowds expected to peak today. So with travelers hitting both the road and the skies, what is driving these expectations that this could be the busiest Labor Day on record?
Well, Joe, it's actually some pretty good news all around. When it comes to gas prices, AAA is saying that this year, right now, gas prices are at $3.21 per gallon compared to last year at $3.36 per gallon. And this is actually the lowest gas price that we've seen since 2021. They actually spiked a little bit recently due to U.S. oil refinery issues, but experts are saying that that's just temporary and that we can expect gas prices to go down even more. Now, in addition to that, domestic airfare is actually down about 6% compared to last year, and hotel rates and rental car rates are also down. The average domestic ticket price, however, is still $720 round trip, so that's not exactly inexpensive, but many people are choosing to travel to the top destinations this holiday travel weekend: Orlando, Seattle, New York City, and Boston. A lot of those are cruise destinations, Joe. So a lot of people are choosing to take cruises to cap off the end of the summer holiday travel season.
And I have a feeling some of those cruises might then go past Labor Day, so they'll have a very long weekend. Just with all these people hitting the roads, with all these people traveling, what is it people can do to make sure their travel does go as smoothly as possible?
So the number one tip, Joe, is to leave as early in the day as possible. Obviously, the longer you wait to hit the road, the more likely you are to run into traffic congestion. Today, specifically, the busiest hours on the road are going to be between 12 and 8 p.m. Also, fill up your gas tank the night before. You can expect a lot of people to head to the gas station when they hit the road. So to avoid that, try to do it the night before. Also, be prepared. Have snacks and water in your car, and also an emergency kit just in case anything should happen. Joe?
All right. Priya in Atlanta, thank you so much. It does look like some stormy weather could slow down your travel holiday plans, depending on where you are or where you're headed. Meteorologist Angie Lastman is tracking it all for us. Angie, good morning.
Hi, Joe. Good morning to you. The good news is we do have some bright spots in the forecast, but yes, you're exactly right. Some stormy weather already starting up across parts of the South. We've got flood watches and some flash flood warnings in effect for Texas, or parts of Texas, I should say, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. And that's kind of the bullseye of this morning's heavy rain. So no surprise that we're dealing with some flooding concerns there. But unfortunately, this kind of stationary front just hangs around over the next couple of days. So we remain unsettled. And again, when we have potential, when we already have really saturated grounds and the potential for more of that rain, not going to be hard for us to pick up some additional flooding concerns as the weekend goes on. That lasts even into Sunday. Monday, we'll see some minor improvements in some spots. But if you're hitting the roads today, you just heard Priya talk all about some of those tips. Here's some areas that you're going to want to watch watch for. I-95 across parts of New England. We've got some showers and storms there. That rain I mentioned along the Gulf Coast, that could slow you down on places like I-20 and I-75. And then out west across parts of the mountains and the plains, I-70, I-90, you could run into some rain as well. The airports I'd watch, Boston specifically and New Orleans. Those are two locations that you'll likely see some delays, weather-related delays, I should say. Otherwise, Minneapolis, Denver, Salt Lake City, Orlando, not a bad idea to keep an eye on those as well. I mentioned there's some good news in the forecast, and there is. Look at the Northeast. I mean, great temperatures, maybe on the cooler side of things for folks that want to get in that last bit of beach weather, but still going to be pretty nice. Mid-70s for Boston, full sunshine across the board for New York City into Monday. We've got a bit of cloud cover, maybe a couple of showers that we'll have to dodge, but they're not going to be long-lasting. Notice Minneapolis, you're dry Saturday and Sunday, but we've got some thunderstorms in the picture by Monday, and we'll see more of those storms kind of firing up over the plains. This is the not-so-great news that we have across the South. It's the rain for you in Houston across the board, but your temperatures will be into the 90s, so if you're looking for warm and humid and rainy, that's where you got to be. Atlanta.
Who doesn't want that on Labor Day?
Yeah.
Rain and hot.
The Goldilocks weather forecast, I call it.
Love it. All right, Angie, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a real problem caused by artificial intelligence. We're going to take a look at why critics say the technology is a threat to the environment. Up first after the break, disturbing new details about that deadly Israeli attack on one of Gaza's busiest hospitals. What NBC News has uncovered next. Stay with us.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.